Good afternoon. You're watching Businessworld Live. I'm Jes Delos Santos. Let's take a look at how the local bourse closed today, Friday. All right, trading ends on a positive note this week after a last-minute buying pushed stocks higher by 0.5%. But even without that, session was mostly in the green, but with muted gains, poised to close higher at 6,885. But just a few minutes before close, investors picked up, bringing the index to the 6,900 level yet again at 6,907.79 to be exact. The index, all in all, made a 2.13% run this week, tempering its decline for the year to just around 3.25%, but not much holding this rally, at least according to Matt Cabangon of AAA Equities, is saying at least during this morning's broadcast that the rally is overbought, and he doesn't expect it rather to be sustainable in the next month or two. This rally, he says, is not news driven, and that it is just the market correcting itself after an unjustified sell-off over the last 2 months. But speaking of news, some developments on mobility in the NCR Plus. The IATF has allowed more establishments to open in the region, including gyms, fitness studios, skating rinks, and racket sports courts. Now, fully vaccinated senior citizens under GCQ and MGCQ areas are also given the green light to go out. Now, the palace likewise, of course, yesterday hinted at easing restrictions in NCR to normal GCQ, from GCQ to heightened restrictions. We're going to give you more details on those reports later. But with more relaxed restrictions, a number of stocks here moved today for the index, including mall operators Ayala Land and Mega World. Ayala Land was up 1.6%, while Mega World eked out a 1.26% gain, but others still ended the day in the red. That includes retailer Robinson Retail's the day's worst performer, down close to 3%. Mall operators SM Prime is also down by 1.2%. You also have food operators Alliance Global, Jollibee, and supplier San Miguel also in the negative territory this Friday session. FGen still is the day's best performer, now up 1.7% to 30 pesos and 70 centavos of share. Cabangon said energy and industrials are places where investors can get in now at pretty good valuations without the diciness of the banking sector. Now, here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The Interagency Task Force allows the reopening of gyms, fitness studios, and other indoor non-contact sports establishments in the NCR Plus. These venues will be subject to a 30% capacity restriction. Group classes are also prohibited. Only individual exercise sessions are allowed. The Trade Department says some 22,000 workers and 2,000 establishments in the sector have been affected by the forced shutdown due to the pandemic. Meanwhile, the IATF is also allowing the movement of fully vaccinated senior citizens in GCQ and MGCQ areas. But take note that this only applies to travel within their respective location. Senior citizens planning to go outside must present their vaccination card upon entering establishments. Now, Meralco customers could expect slightly higher power bills this June. Meralco says this is due to higher charges in the wholesale electricity spot market, or WESM, as the Luzon grid has experienced tight supply. Meralco announced that overall rate increased this month to 8 pesos and 67 centavos per kilowatt hour. This translates to a 16 peso increase for households consuming 200 kilowatt hours per month. The power distributor noted insufficient reserves for the month of May to accommodate the series of power outages in Luzon. The pandemic has accelerated the digital push the world over, but it also has given rise to questions on trust, especially among businesses and consumers. How should establishments navigate these security concerns? We have Ben King, Regional Chief Security Officer for Asia Pacific of Okta, for some answers. We speak to him straight from Sydney. Good evening, at least there in Sydney. Ben?
Hi, Jester. Great to be here.
All right. So first, give us an overview. What were the key points here from your study, the state of digital trust, especially in the Asia Pacific region?
Sure. Look, if the last 18 months has taught us anything, it's that a business's key differentiator is no longer their physical retail or branch network, it's their online offering. We've had workers shift to remote, we've had consumers shift to remote, we've had change in behaviours from both of them in a sustained way, all while the threat landscape has been changing and criminals are trying to capitalise on the chaos that's going on. So digital trust in a digital-first economy is increasingly important. And the research we've conducted is replicating research we've done in North America and in Europe already. It's a survey of 1,700 professionals and office workers in the Asia-Pacific region, really looking into how consumers perceive trust in digital channels and how brands are affected by a change in that digital trust. So if I was to give you an overview of the top 3 points as I see them in the Asia-Pacific region, the first one is that over half of respondents, at 58%, are unlikely to purchase from a company that they don't trust, where they don't trust that brand online already. Secondly, almost half, at 45% of Asian respondents, listed data breaches as the single biggest factor to influence them or deter them from consuming services online. And the third takeaway is that 38%, well over a third of respondents, have permanently stopped using a company's services following a data breach. So these are really quite huge numbers, and it's quite easy to draw that conclusion of how these would impact a company's bottom line if there was a compromise of their digital trust.
Okay, good 3 points here that you mentioned, but I want to zoom in on the Philippines, of course. What's interesting about the study as well is that it also found that 25% of respondents from our country, from the Philippines, like most part of Asia as well, find search engines and online database as the most trustworthy. What's driving this?
Look, I think when people consume different services online, they inherently have a different level of trust. They may inherently trust search engines or government websites more. And when they're on social media, for example, they may inherently not trust it and hopefully likewise choose not to share very sensitive data in that regard.
But is this the right avenue here? Are data really safely handled in search engines and online database?
Look, I think that with the search engine, the transaction is slightly different. I think consumers are pulling out information. So the survey is saying they trust that data rightly or wrongly, but it's not a vehicle where they're uploading their own personal data, their own confidential data.
And given that as well, what threats are Filipinos most exposed to online? And is there now more caution when it comes to providing information online?
Absolutely. The outcomes for the Philippines are consistent with the Asia-Pacific region. I think it's a digitally savvy population, more trusting in general of digital channels, but also more cautious in general of where they share their data. There's 2 points I'd highlight for the Philippines respondents. We had 254 respondents in the Philippines. The 2 biggest takeaways were that 43% of respondents, again, were concerned with data breaches in the services that they're using, and 38% were concerned with websites requesting more data than they need for a transaction. So more data than they need to purchase a good or to consume a service. If I look at both those takeaways, really they're both about the protection of personal and confidential data. People don't want to upload that into a system where they're not sure how it's going to be used, whether it's going to be on-sold or given to someone else. And if businesses want to react to secure that digital trust and maintain it and improve it, they really need to start increasing their security practices, and that starts with digital identity services.
Now, also, what's the key factor here among Filipinos when it comes to trusting digital brands, and which do we value the least?
Digital brands. In terms of what the survey said, as I said, there's inherently different levels of trust in different brands and different services. That trust is lost when there's a data breach or when people feel like they're not getting what they paid for. Perhaps the website doesn't look legitimate, or perhaps the photos of what they're purchasing, whether it's a good or a service, doesn't add up to what it is they've purchased.
Now, Ben, in terms of oversight and data privacy, how does the Philippines fare compared to its neighbors? Do you have enough on that front to actually build trust, especially when you're talking about government policies?
Right. Look, I think compared to their neighbours, there are strong controls in Philippines. There's certainly been plenty of government awareness in the face of what has been an onslaught of social engineering and phishing or voice phishing or SMS phishing, for example. There's certainly strong controls in Hong Kong and Singapore, for example, but also in the Philippines. I think it's up to individual companies to implement strong controls themselves in terms of cybersecurity practices and also data protection practices. And they can do that in a few ways. They can uplift and modernize their technology. They can limit who has access to what systems and what data and where that sensitive data is. And they can implement quite simple and well understood controls like multi-factor authentication to make sure that people that are getting access to data are really the people they should be. So that's when you log on, not just with a username and password, but also you have a number on your mobile phone or using a fingerprint or facial recognition, for example.
Following that, I mean, how do Philippine organizations fare to other Asian organizations when it comes to taking up cybersecurity platforms in order to at least protect their businesses, at the same time consumers?
Look, I think they're in the same place with everybody in a world that's been turned on its head by a pandemic. So we've seen a massive changes worldwide, as I mentioned at the beginning, changing behaviours, and organisations are really chasing to understand what's going on, understand the changing threat environment, and catch up. Criminals have probably moved faster than organisations, and perhaps they're more agile, but organisations need to react. And if they're going to secure and enhance digital trust, they need to not only implement the security controls I'm talking about, but also then go and communicate to their customers, indeed over-communicate, to capitalise on the good work they're doing to build that trust.
Okay, moving forward, what then do you think is the outlook here for Philippine organizations, especially when it comes to doing businesses online?
I think there's absolutely appetite from consumers to continue to consume online. I don't think this is going to change anytime soon. So the outlook for Philippines businesses is to implement these controls, as I said, uplift their technology controls, implement digital or cloud identity as the heart of their security program, and then communicate with customers, not in terms of just the good work they're doing, but also uplifting the awareness of their customers to the expanded threat environment, be that social engineering or increased phishing, and then also take that to their employees with new awareness of the new threats they're likely to face, but also give their employees access to the right tools to do their job remotely and securely, whether that's anti-malware or anti-phishing services on their home devices, whatever they're using remotely.
All right, digital services not going away anytime soon. It's just a matter of adapting, especially when it comes to building trust. Thank you very much, Ben King, Regional Chief Security Officer for Asia Pacific over at Okta. Thank you, Ben.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And those are the biggest stories this trading day, June 11, 2021. Catch Businessworld live again Monday next week at 9:30 a.m. for the market open and 3:15 p.m. for the market close. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News. Mask on, wash hands, and stay safe. Philippines, have a great weekend.